Scottish Church of St. Andrew, dedicated to none other than right? And it's going to be Akrapoda we're going to talk about. And out there is towards the direction of the Dead Sea, but I don't want to get too sidetracked by that. Please give me your attention. We are going to talk about the middle of the 19th century. Jerusalem's history for the first few hundred years of Ottoman rule. Jerusalem is a backwaters place, despite the fact that Suleiman has the walls refurbished and so forth, and hopefully you'll hear about that. Despite that, the city is basically ignored. By the early part of the 1800s, the city is already overcrowded. The Jewish quarter, which is part of our subject today, which is already terribly overcrowded, becomes even more crowded in 1837. 1837, there was a huge earthquake, where the epicenter was in the city of Tzfat, or Safed, up north, and many of the survivors came down here to Jerusalem, or up here. You always go up to Jerusalem. Came up here in what was already overcrowded conditions. So take something which is very crowded and make it even more crowded at very terrible conditions. Now, at the same time, what's going on in the world? In the 1850s, you have a war called the Crimean War, which was basically Russia against everybody else, all right, including the Turks. Following that war, not only but following that war, the Ottoman Empire started to open up to the West. It realized, because it had been allies with France and England, all kinds of. Can you imagine such a combination? Turkey and France and England at the middle of the 19th, really difficult. But because of that, they started to become Europeanized, especially here in the Holy Land. Look up the Crimean War. It was all about the holy places in the Holy Land. So I don't want to get too far afield on that. But just take my word for it. Mark the middle of the 19th century as the opening of the old city. The doors are still closed for the next 30 years. But in terms of foreign influences, the Ottoman Empire is starting to wane. It's in terrible financial trouble, and then it gets this idea. The idea is, let's sell off property. So they sold property primarily to churches with a capital C, meaning the church organizations. All right, the organization or the church that had the most forethought was the Greek Orthodox Church. Not only did they buy up whatever property they could possibly get their hands on in the old city, they foresaw the possibility of using property outside the old city. And they bought this whole area out here. Have you ever heard of the Knesset, Israel's parliament? Yeah. That sits on property that to this day is leased from the Greek Orthodox Church. I kid you not. Okay? All right? Now that was forethought in the part of the Greek Orthodox. But you had all the other churches that were trying to buy up property. And you have for the first time foreign consulates being represented here in Jerusalem, etc., etc. And eventually, as you get closer to the end of the 19th century, the gates are opened up. The gates, which were closed from sunset until sunrise, suddenly became open, and there was the visit of a fellow who is very important to our whole story, whose name is Kaiser Wilhelm II, who comes here in 1898, and the whole city gets decked out from him. I have some really nice pictures, but I want to do this quickly. And if you can imagine, the whole city is developing and growing. Now I'm going to take you back to the 1850s, 60s, before most of what I just said happened. And that is the old city is becoming overpopulated, especially in the Jewish quarter. Along comes a fellow who makes 7 voyages to the Holy Land from England, and his name is Moses Montefiore. Moses or Musa Montefiore. Musa Montefiore. I don't think anybody called him Musa, but for the sake of right. And do you imagine in the 19th century making 7 different voyages? And when he came with everything. He came with all his servants and everything else. Who was he? He was originally born in Italy to a Sephardic Jewish family. By Sephardic, I mean that they were from, actually in this case, originally from Spain, way back, tracing back to the expulsion in 1492, where the Jews were exiled from Spain. But he came as a young boy already. His family moved to England. They were well off, and then when he grew up, he made a fortune on the stock market. So he had this rare combination of old money and new money. So money was not a problem. So when he came here on his pilgrimages, if you will, to Palestine, to the land of Israel, he came with his carriage that we passed by there, with all the drivers, in great fanfare and everything else. Moses Montefiore, on one of his trips, gets to Jerusalem. Why only one of his trips? Because getting to Jerusalem was a very, very difficult thing to do. There was really no road until about 1860, 1870. There was no real road. So you're taking your carriage over, trying to travel from Jaffa over no road. It was impossible. He gets here, he sees the condition of the Jews and says, why don't you go out of the city? Walls. Go out of the city. Okay? See walls there. And people looked at him and said, right, we should go live on the moon. Okay? That's what it was like. Because the city walls gave them protection. The walls were there to gave them protection, gave them security, etc., etc. And nobody lived outside the city walls. There were maybe some monasteries and some Bedouins, etc., but there were no neighborhoods out here. So Moses Montefiore says, all right, if we build it, they will come. Okay? So what he does is he builds an apartment building, which is down there, conveniently because it was Independence Day. There's an Israeli flag on top of a long building. And do you see the top of, do you see the roof of it?
Flat.
Do you see what I mean? Way down, all right?
Yep.
Okay?
Ah, yeah, the long one.
It has a very
This one.
long flat
Yeah,
roof.
yes.
And has what we call crenellation, which means like teeth,
Yes.
all right, that goes like this
Yes.
to look what the city wall looks like. And he did this one long thing and said, now people can come out. But people aren't going to come out unless they have what? Unless they have a living. So then he came up with this idea. He was here in the wintertime. It's very blowy, and he says, let's bring a windmill here, and that will give them income. The windmill will ground the wheat, and they'll have an income. All right, here you can see the wind is really very strong today. Okay, he has this shipped in from his hometown of Ramsgate in England, and it's brought here under great fanfare. Takes them weeks to get it up here in all its parts from the Jaffa port. And now he's ready to.
By that point, it's probably wooden, not in Jerusalem stone color.
Okay, the stone. No, this was built just like it is.
Oh, really?
Just like it is.
You thought you said Jerusalem stone came in 1920.
No, I said the
The
ordinance.
Right.
The ordinance
right.
was
But
that
things
way.
were already built that
Right?
color.
So, and the top is not original here.
Reflecting
Okay.
on
All right.
the walls.
Sorry.
It's reflecting on the walls.
What's reflecting the walls?
The color of
The
the
color.
Oh yeah,
Same stone.
absolutely. There's a uniformity.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out. So we have so then we have a living, We have nice new quarters. Do you think people came running out? The answer to the question is no. Nobody wanted to come. They came in drip